you need to know that there is nuclear war. And believe me, if a nuclear warhead strikes Paris, you don't know here, you don't see it. Probably you will know because suddenly the media will talk about it. But what if all the media around the world stop broadcasting because of these magnetic pulses? Well, that's clearly something you need to know. If tomorrow morning all the media, all the computers drop, and maybe your car doesn't start, and there is a massive blackout, and it seems to be worldwide, or at least in a very large region, there is a possibility that there's been nuclear war, and you don't know about it because maybe you're not in a place that is targeted. And if there's no news, how can you know? You need someone who walks to tell you. We take for granted that communications are easy and worldwide and satellites. But if these things stop because of that war, you don't know. So you need to think. And you know now, and those people who will read the book will know what to do to inform themselves or to guess. And it's not a certainty. But if there is a blackout, yes, probably there is a chance that something very bad has started. And then you know that it's not the time to go around and breathe the nice new air. And it's maybe time to do some steps towards the second element, which is protection. And you don't need to build a bunker and go into a shelter. If you have one in Switzerland, yes, it's interesting. But this is not the most important thing. Is certainly to know how you can protect yourself from the fallout, how you can get clean food, how you can filter and clean the water you drink. If you are already thinking about these things, you have a huge step ahead in terms of keeping your health and not succumbing from fallout and radiation. And of course, this is very complex topic. This is something that I had to go back in my physics books and get new ones to make sure that we can explain how it works very easily. And again, Ukraine was a very interesting experience talking with people in Ukraine that were there when Chernobyl exploded and what they are still doing, because there are still people who live in areas which are quite contaminated, and not the majority of them are not ill. They know and they have learned what to do, what kind of food you eat, what kind of food you don't eat, how you clean it, how you boil it, how you prepare it. All these things are very easy and simple once you know them, but honestly, who knows today what to do? How do you prepare meat? Do you boil it or you don't boil it? Well, then you discover that if you boil it with a lot of salt, if that meat was contaminated, 90% of the contamination goes away. Well, now you know. But these are very simple things that we can learn, as an example, that Ukrainian and Belarusian people have learned through difficult pain, unfortunately for them. And of course, this doesn't preclude the fact that if you're near a place where nuclear warheads hits, if you're a few hundred meters away, you die, for sure. So I'm not telling that you can survive anything. If that happens on you, and you live near that military base or near that communication center that perhaps you don't even know about, and that is a target, well, then you meet your maker. And I hope for you that you have been a good person. But, there's nothing guaranteed. That's something I always want to make sure. But one other thing that is important to say, and I will conclude on that, because I think I want to leave a lot of space for questions, is the following. As I quickly talked about the United States scenario about the EMP. If global nuclear war happens, then you go back to the scenario I presented last time in my conference, and definitely that I talk in all my books, is that nuclear war means total collapse of the global economy. Local economies may still exist, but the global economy, at least for a long time, and that may be years, if not decades, is gone. Because you do not recover like that from the destruction of the supply chains, of all the systems that transport goods, especially food, from one place to another. So you have to think about where you live. And the answer for any one of you who live in a city is no. To the question that are we self-sustainable in terms of food and water? The answer is no. We import food everywhere. And therefore, if the import systems are breaking down, because who is going to take a truck and say, oh, I'm going to bring my tomatoes across half of Europe to feed the people in Paris because there's been nuclear war? No, you stay home. You stay home. And if someone says, no, but I really need to sell the tomatoes, you still don't do it. And they say, if you don't do it, I don't pay you. Well, I don't care. I'm not going to travel half of Europe in a place where nuclear war has happened and there's radiation. And you stay home. So this is very simple behavior. So no one will do anything for a long time unless you are prepared with everything that I explained in my first book. So the economic collapse will follow. Now, whether some people are planning for economic collapse as a way to gain power, this is not something I know, but it's possible. But certainly, the good news in this disastrous scenario is that if you prepare yourself to be self-sufficient in terms of water and food and the other things that I explained in my other books, you have not more to do. We don't need to buy gas masks. We don't need to buy nuclear suits. We don't need to build a shelter and go inside and live for not even months or years, but even weeks underground. You don't need all that. You shut the windows, you stay home for a few days, you wait for rain to come down, and you inform yourself, and you live relatively small. And where you live is the most important part, is that you don't live in the cities. You live outside. You live in places where, like I live in the mountains. Who's going to bomb the mountain? There's no point. There's no need. There's no strategy. Of course, we'll get fallout. Yes, maybe, probably. But you don't want to live near targets. So these are things that I explained, but certainly it's important to understand the process, to understand what is possible. And the Sheikh, I think, described a very, probably what I also think is the most likely scenario is that something starts with what is happening in Syria. Maybe not tomorrow morning, maybe not next week. Who knows? Maybe, we had a big scare exactly 2 years ago, or 1.5 years ago, in September 2014. When there was suddenly the Russian fleet, the American fleet, there was Israeli submarines, all in this little piece of water off Latakia of Syria. And there was a big uncertainty, and of course we don't know all the news on the moment they happened, but there was a Syrian plane that was shut down, and it was very tense. Nothing happened. Now it's tense again. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe cooler heads prevail. Maybe someone phones Mr. Erdogan and says, no, if you do something, we are going to be extremely angry at you. And maybe things quiet down, and maybe they start again in 3 months. Certainly, this situation is not, it's very hot right now. It can become a little bit less hot, but it will keep being hot. So in my opinion, it is also around Syria, and with the countries, the nations, the powers that are involved, that go from Saudi, from Iran, from Israel, from Turkey, and of course NATO and Russia, and even China, which means it's all the people who matter and who have this potential for nuclear war, who are involved. And there's always, whether you believe that man's actions are controlled or written by superior powers or not, some unexpected things can happen, and unexpected things can lead to irrational decision, to rash decision. And when you have nuclear weapons in the mix, a mistake can be extremely, extremely costly. So with that, I finished. I remember that if you want to read my book, it's translated in Arabic with the forward of Sheikh Imran Hussein, and you can find it online or on Arabic libraries everywhere. Thank you very much.